The True Story of Gina Renee Hall. From the Web of Lies, A Day Made in Hell. What happened to Gina Renee Hall? There's a person who will speak up and tell you the truth. A person who will address the inaccuracies of what is deemed by many to be truth. A person who will be Gina Renee Hall's voice, and that person is me, Gina's sister, Dlana. The family and friends of Gina Hall always have known that everything composed about that terrible night in June 1980 was not the whole story. But we let it go because her killer was prosecuted and convicted, and nothing we could do would bring Gina back. We hoped for decades that we would one day bring Gina's murdered, hidden body home. But now, more than ever, non-truths continue to dishonor who Gina Hall was and is, and everything that her life stood for. So for over a year, we have been saying it is time for Gina's side of the story, for people to know it, to be her voice, so it would be heard. And not just hers, other victims too. This is a woman's issue. It was a woman's issue in 1980, and it is a woman's issue today. Decades passed, and it is still a woman's issue. So here is the first fallacy that I will address in a series of videos. The first one is the composed story, the spark that ignites my worry, concern, unhappiness about what happened to my sister, and how easily it was for the male mindset to rule. The composed story, a story that originated from a killer and his best friend. That story goes like this. 18-year-old Gina Hall met a man, and she left a nightclub to be with this man. By her own choice, willingly, with this 28-year-old man she had just met. To go to a cabin on the lake, and when she refused this man's sexual advances, he became enraged and murdered her. Fairly straightforward story, logical based on the best friend's testimony, Bill King. It is just not that simple. In 1980, many people insisted there was no way Gina Hall left with a man. Any man. No man. No way. Not Gina. People would say, over and over. But that part of the story did not seem to matter. It would have been important to Gina for people to know her story, the story that matched her character. But Gina's story would have opposed Bill King's statements. And of course, her murderer, Stephen Epperly's story. Many continue to compose the story, for the most part, from one man's court testimony, the killer's best friend. Well, that fact alone should present a questionable perspective to truth. But it did not then, and obviously it still does not now. One man's testimony is at the root of this composed story, and Gina's story was ignored. The biased, one-sided, composed story created from a male mindset became the official story, not just in 1980, but still now, 40 years later. That same old composed story continues to be repeated as if it is the only truth over and over in books, podcasts, social media, current news releases, everywhere, as if no one ever lies under oath. The composed story became the perceived truth of Gina Hall's last moments in this world. Well, one part is true. Gina Hall was murdered by Stephen Epperly. So let's get right to it. The new information in this video is released for my sister. The truth that is Gina's story. Finally. In November, with the help of a brilliant forensic scientist, a forensic anthropologist that I brought to Virginia, and with his amazing instrument that he has invented, we zeroed in on a place on McCoy Road, just a few miles outside of Blacksburg, not far from the location of that 1980 upscale Marriott Inn where Gina went dancing, June 28, 1980. McCoy Road is a place where my sister had never been before, ever, until that night. This place of interest, we discovered, was, in 1980, just a field bordering that side of the road. But now, it is a gravel driveway. It is a place that we now know Gina had been. Her DNA leaving behind an organic marker in a place where she was hurt. Something of Gina remains buried there somewhere under that gravel. Where exactly? So next I went to one of the best human remains detection dog teams in this world. The HRD dogs are confirming evidence of truth. The law enforcement would use these cadaver dogs as sometimes referenced by them, cadaver dogs. Local volunteer search and rescue dogs are used every day, respected and validating. So I went to an organization who has a team of 60 specifically trained dogs, and to the renowned, highly respected man who he himself trains most everyone's dogs. Many, many people throughout his career. And that team of dogs identified that exact same place within inches on January 25th, 2020. When one of the best human remains detection dogs in the country quickly alerted to the smell of organic decomposition. Won't go away. A place where evidence of Gina could be found if I wanted to meticulously dig up that person's driveway. A knocked out tooth, blood on a rock, something of Gina lies buried there beneath that gravel driveway. This amazing dog validated and helped pinpoint the exact location found earlier in November, a discovery that at first surprised me, yet it really did not, always knowing Gina and remembering that broken inside driver's side door handle. These amazing dogs validated many other places, some for other folks. But for now, I want to share a few more pieces of potentially relevant information to consider in terms of the killer and his best friend's composed story. It seems Epperly liked to impersonate a cop. Oh yes, that was what Dorothy Allison told us in 1980. She told the authorities that. But in September 2019, a copy of a Facebook post was sent to me from a story that had been shared publicly about this person's experience with Stephen Epperly. This person told his account of his Epperly story in just a random Facebook conversation with other people. But I found it quite interesting. He said that late one night, Epperly pulled him over, blocked him in, and pretended to be a cop. Truth is truth. Truth does not change. I spoke to Bill King for the first time in my life in March 2019 when he called me concerned about the recent release of a book and the upcoming release of my book, The Miraculous Journey. He had heard I had written. King talked on and on and on, and these words were his exact words that he shared with me. He knew up at our place up there that there was a key hidden, and he knew exactly where it was, at. Of course, I heard key. But I let him continue sharing all of his thoughts for at least 10 minutes until he paused. Then I asked him, if Epperly knew there was a key and where it was, why did he even need one then? Why even go to the parking lot? Well, he did. He had a cinder block in the back. As you go into the kitchen, we had it at the back of the kitchen door, and it had a key underneath. There, like I say, I drew a blank on that when I read the book about going outside and the key and everything. I don't know. I wish I had the answers for you on everything, but whatever you ask me, I am going to tell you the truth, and if I can remember, I'll tell you everything about it that I know. I really can't help you on that cause, because I think, golly, wait a minute, did I even go outside? That's weird about a key. I don't know why there would have been a key in the car, and where did that story come from? Referencing that book he had read. Bill, I said, it was your testimony. And it didn't match the other stuff. So I don't know, maybe you were, I don't know, Bill. Only you know. Only you. Wait a minute. Now you're saying my trial. What did you just say, Dlana? Your trial testimony. Was that what? You went out to the car to get Steve the keys so he could take Gina to the lake house. This is my opinion of what happened to Gina Renee Hall, and yes, it is not only based on the case facts that we have always known, it is based on recent and new information, like the HRD dogs, and it is information that is simply not to be ignored, if anyone has any morals or ethics about them. Continuing to speak about my sister and her murder by repeating that old story built on a web of lies, without taking into consideration any of all of the new information, is just wrong. I believe my sister was targeted the moment she pulled into that Marriott parking lot, when they all parked and walked in together at the same time. She only stayed at the Marriott a little over an hour, and many saw her dancing with a man wearing glasses. I believe I know who that friend was. But it was not Epperly. And the last 30 minutes of that time was spent at two girls' table to get away from a man who was bothering her. Yes, 2 separate police reports in 1980 were made the first week after Gina's disappearance by 2 women who saw Gina's picture in a missing persons news release. And they came forward. And even a 3rd attempt telling authorities right before the trial, identifying Epperly as the man that was bothering her inside the Marriott. When my sister walks out to leave the Marriott, one witness states he saw the girl walk out and King and Epperly walked out behind her. Now that's some truth. Gina gets in her car, puts on her night driving glasses as she always did, and she leaves the busy Marriott parking lot, turning right on Price's Fork Road to drive home to Radford. And Epperly follows her. Wait a minute, you say. Epperly didn't have a car. Someone else had to drive him. Who? There's only 2 choices. Either King drove, the man who walked out with him, or he saw who drove Epperly. Can't be anything else. And the key is the key to that answer. Gina gets to the intersection of Price's Fork Road and McCoy Road. It is my opinion that Gina was pulled over by what she believed was a policeman, blocked in so she could not leave. And just like most girls, especially in 1980, Gina would never imagine in that moment that someone could actually pretend to be a policeman and bring harm to her, until she recognized the man that approached her car. The same man that was reported as bothering her 30 minutes earlier inside the Marriott. Which is why she quickly grabbed the inside door handle strap. Others, not just her family, everyone should have been suspect of this particular scenario. I mean, why else would the inside car handle be broken? It was broken because Gina held onto it with all of her strength. From a man that she recognized, or men that she knew was going to harm her. How can this be ignored by so many? So where exactly did this happen? Watch the dog video in the end and you'll know. This amazing animal will identify the exact spot within inches of the place we had already identified as Gina's abduction site, because part of her still lies there, underneath that ground. Maybe the glasses she wore, with hair or blood on them. Maybe they got knocked off, and because they're plastic, they're still there. She fought, and something organic of Gina is still there and always will be. Just like we could take the hair that was stuck in the blood in the trunk of my car on that carpet, and we could test it for DNA if we had it. It's always there, DNA. And we could consider that the blood in that trunk came from that hard struggle. Maybe she was in the trunk twice. Her hair sticking in the blood on the car's trunk's carpet. Can we ever begin to understand her fear or to know what she experienced? I don't think so. So King stated in 1980 that the entire reason he went out to the Marriott parking lot was to get the keys to the lake house for Epperly, so Epperly could take Gina there. And it was King's words that corroborated the foundational story, that Gina was willing and happy. So, I have one question, all American boys. What's this answer? What really happened to Gina Renee Hall just after midnight on June 29th, 1980 on the remote McCoy Road? And another question we should all be asking. Exactly how long had this game been being played? I suspect at least since 1977. So how many others? Watch the video. It's the exact place where part of Gina will always be.